What's the total price tag of UBI?
So the headline cost is around 2.4 trillion. So let's say you get 800 billion from the value-added tax. Use about 1.6. Now, all of this money is in the economy. You end up creating a lot more revenue for businesses, new jobs, even some new businesses in some cases. And conservatively, according to the Roosevelt Institute, you would grow the consumer economy by 8 to 10% indefinitely, which ends up generating an additional 400 billion in revenue or so, conservatively. So now you're down to a little bit more than per year.
Okay.
So now you're down to a little bit more than a trillion. You save hundreds of billions on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room healthcare, and items that we spend hundreds of billions on right now. And it was a corrections officer in New Hampshire who said this to me. He said, we should pay people to stay out of jail because when they're in jail, we spend so much on them. This was a prison guard. Like, we all know that when someone hits our institutions, it's incredibly expensive. Yeah. It's actually much more cost efficient to keep that person healthy, stable, prosperous, and out of our institutions. And think about the cost of an emergency room visit, because we know that right now the indigent are using emergency rooms as essentially their primary care. The conditions get worse and worse and they show up, and then it's much more expensive, and it's obviously much more expensive in terms of the human cost and their productivity. So you save low hundreds of billions of dollars on those current expenses. The last step, which is the magic, is that if you put this money into our hands, what does it mean in real life? People get healthier, mentally healthier, less stressed out, more productive, graduation rates go up, decision making goes up, domestic violence goes down, hospital visits go down. There have been studies that said if you were to alleviate gross poverty in this country, you would increase our GDP by $700 billion a year based on just education and health outcomes being better. So that gives you another, let's call it a couple hundred billion in greater tax revenue, because if you grow the economy by this increment. And then the last piece, you have to be a bit optimistic and aggressive, but think about the increased level of entrepreneurship, risk-taking, creativity, and enterprise if people knew that their basic needs are going to be met. Because right now, the rates of business formation in the United States are at multi-decade lows in most of the country. They're at historic lows for young people, for your generation, for a number of reasons, because we've loaded you up with student loans and a bunch of other things. And so if you become optimistic about that shift, then you can make a case that you're going to get back the remainder. The trickle-up economy would actually pay for itself many times over in a way that the trickle-down economy never has.